And now for something completely different. I am not an academic by training. I spent, let's just say, multiple decades as a first responder and emergency manager, mostly out in California, but I did my time at FEMA as well. And after a while, the experience became a bit of a Groundhog Day business as certain fundamental problems recurred. So recently, I've found a home at Carnegie Mellon Silicon Valley campus where they're allowing me to work on a few of what I think are the deeper problems. One of them, of course, is the eternal trade-off between efficiency and resilience. I think we've heard many examples of that raised today. Another one is the issue of managing the boundary between the formal and informal organization of emergency response, where the formal is the governmental and corporate, and the informal recently has manifested itself as what we're currently calling social media. And unfortunately, I think those two are placed in opposition when they probably needn't be. So I'm going to be speaking a bit from the more official side of that boundary. And the interesting thing about that boundary is that during disasters, that boundary line tends to move and then rebound. So I'll be talking largely from my experience on the official side, and then Dr. Iannucci will follow and talk about something that's really a little more on the other side. We have been pursuing interoperability in public safety communications actually since well before 9/11, although it became very much of a theme then. And one might ask, after 20 years or so, are we there yet? And the answer that I would offer is, I'm afraid we may be. And the reason I'm afraid we may be, how many here are old enough to have ever experienced a telephone party line? All right. If, in fact, everyone can talk to everyone all the time, have we, in fact, reinvented the party line? This really, on the resilience theme today, this falls into the category of what I think it was Dr. Rexford categorized as hidden dependencies. And I just want to point to one that I think we may be needing some of our attention. I bring you now into the world of the public safety first responder, where the diagrams are not nearly as neat, and the quaint term radio is still heard from time to time. And in land mobile radio, as we've used it in public safety for many years, we get several things for free. One of the things we get for free is a shared situational awareness. The people on a channel hear each other. They know what each other are doing, approximately where they are. They have a feeling for everybody's operational tempo. And I would never underestimate the importance of being able to hear the tone in your fellow responder's voice as he talks on the radio. A lot of information there. We, of course, got a very simple routing scheme. At one time, I think there was a sort of a pejorative sense to the term push-to-talk mentality. But really, nice thing about a push-to-talk system is the setup time is minimal, and the complexity is minimal. And we did, in fact, have occasional user-directed patching between channels, but pretty much you knew who was on that party line with you. We had localized network management, call signs, what in the IT world we might refer to as the namespace, was managed locally. This, of course, became an issue when we got into mutual aid, and that was one of the issues that the incident command system tried to address. Our codes and procedures and an a priori knowledge of network membership. One of the things that we've seen happen lately with some of the interoperability tools is two different agencies' radio channels will be patched together, and then they discover that they don't know how each other works. They don't recognize each other's call signs, they don't know their procedures. Oh, and access control, basically by physical security of these devices, a certain amount of economic protection that was afforded largely through the mechanism of FCC type acceptance. You didn't have just anybody popping up on your channel, and you had some idea that anybody who popped up on your channel probably had some bona fides. In the P25/LTE global interoperability world, we don't get a lot of those things for free anymore. We have to manage them. If we want situational awareness, we have to work to create it. A lot of the systems that now encourage a point-to-point, person-to-person cell phone style connection. And so a lot of that shared situational awareness that we used to get for free in land mobile radio can no longer be taken for granted. Also, data is increasingly replacing voice. This gives us many new capabilities. It does strip some of that affective layer out of the communication. We have to deal with routing in what can become a very complex environment. We have to deal with issues of identity. Where in the network are they? What procedure do we have to follow to reach them? We have to deal with network management almost on an incident-by-incident basis, identifying entities, and of course many of the entities are people, but increasingly the entities may be devices, sensor platforms, expert systems, non-human entities. We have to inventory their capabilities. We have to assign roles to entities based on their capabilities. We have to globalize semantics. In California, we've been trying to work out just the taxonomy of fire apparatus for 30 years now, and we're gaining on it. We're gaining on it. And of course, access control becomes a real issue. So things that never used to be in the domain of voice communication, except in the military, key management, identity management, basic notions of identity for that matter, now we have to deal with. Now, the incident command system was supposed, you've seen the TV commercial about ATM fix everything? Well, ICS was supposed to fix a lot of this stuff. And it does, common vocabulary, manageable span of control. These are really good things. Unfortunately, when we get something on the scale of Sandy, or when we get something that develops as quickly as 9/11, we still struggle. One of the hallmarks of a disaster, in my experience, is that, contrary to popular opinion, the problem is not managing scarcity. It's managing glut. Too many issues, too many resources, too many people, too much information in a system that can't scale up fast enough. So these scalability issues have suddenly come to each individual fireman's and police officers and medics' handset, and that's something kind of new. So we've made enormous progress, but the job is by no means finished. Now, as academics and largely an IT crowd, you will of course recognize the traditional OSI stack, and this is a real good mnemonic, if nothing else, that there's more to communications than just the physical layer or the network layer. People who've been involved in emergency management are familiar with the SAFECOM continuum. Not really a stack, it's more parallel tracks in time. But I like this model where you can think of the whole OSI stack as being in that bottom layer, because it predicts two interesting things. The first being that the perception of problems tends to propagate downward. Therefore, if you have an organizational problem or a people problem or a procedure problem, inevitably they'll blame the radios. And over time, new technologies propagate upwards, causing change. And it's that I think we're in now. We've done a lot in the radio space achieving interoperability at the technology layer. Now that's pushing up, and our procedures and our training are also going to have to be addressed. So these are issues that are really familiar in in information technology. And we have any number of different technologies that we use to try to address it in the IT world. But when we get into the public safety communication space, which approach are we going to use, and who's going to make that choice, right? Are we going to leave it to a market decision? I'm not sure the market is necessarily incented toward interoperability. Historically, markets have tended to follow the interoperability train, but rarely actually led it. So, interoperability is a wonderful thing, and the question I hope that we will pay some attention to over the next few years is, where's the phone book for this new interoperable NextNet public safety communications environment that we're building? And anyone else who is concerned about that is welcome to track me down, and perhaps we can figure something. Thank you.
Thank you.